Hey everybody, this is Elle Nagy from the Unapologetic Women Empowerment Dynasty, and you're listening to the Unapologetic Women podcast, the show for women who choose to live their legacies unleashed, unlimited, and unapologetic. If this is a space you are curious about, visit unapologetic-women.com. Today we're talking about trusting our intuition with Sally Arkell-Boles. Sally is a high-performance leadership coach and mentor who has left her corporate career to partner with professionals, businesses, and entrepreneurs in personal and professional development. She believes that if we understand how the mind works, we can start to change our perception of the world and create the results we desire. With a passion for creating a life that gets you to live on purpose, Sally empowers her clients to take back control of their future and live a life full of joy and abundance. Thanks so much for joining us. This is Sally. But I think it is important for us to share, and I did a post on Instagram about this yesterday, about the whole vulnerability, and as you now say, the intense conversations. When for me, it's about us as women just giving ourselves permission to start being real and to start saying what we really think unapologetically without feeling ashamed about it and without feeling vulnerable. And I think I'm going to do another post because I was lying in bed this morning and thinking about it, and I'm like, man, vulnerability is when your structure is out of integrity. It's when there is a compromise in the structure that the structure is vulnerable. Why are we telling people to be compromised when in fact what we should be telling people is it's time for us to get real, and there's only strength in your realness.
Yes.
And I feel that that is so important. So, Sally, thank you for being on this call today.
Thank you.
And with that start, I can't wait to see where it's going to go, right?
Yes, exactly.
Let's keep this real. Let's keep this real.
Absolutely.
And let's go where our conversations have not gone before. And in thereby giving everybody permission to celebrate diversity in thoughts, celebrate diversity of life experiences, and celebrate the fact that we as women can come together in complete diversity, not being like-minded, but being like-hearted, and grow in the process of having these conversations. And I can't think of a better woman to have a conversation with today than you. So thank you.
I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be fun because I think just what you've even said in the introduction, the like-heartedness is what most of us have missed when we've been working for years and years in our corporate careers. And our heart was almost taken out of the business in a lot of ways. So I'm excited to see what we end up chatting about today.
Yeah, I think heart has been taken out in a large part of life, not just in business. We've been so focused on mindset, and I'm not negating mindset. Like, mindset is a game changer, and mindset absolutely is important. But when we only focus on mindset, which is the space of the masculine, and we negate the heart set, which is the space of the divine feminine, we get into the high achievement mode, which most of us ladies have been rocking for years without satisfaction, because there's no satisfaction in producing when we desire creating. And mind is production, heart is creation. And so I think it's why so many of us are craving like-hearted people around us, not like-minded, because we're tired of producing and we desire creation at this time in our lives.
Yeah, I would agree with that because I did come from corporate and I always felt like I was one of the guys, right? I was driving like one of the guys. I would dress like a girl. I would show up like a woman, but I was always, striving for that next step. What else could I do to be more productive? What else can I do to get the results? And it was always that, that mindset of, I just need to do the things to be able to get to where I want to be. And although it seemed to me that I had heart in it because I was striving for the goals, having stepped away from the corporate world and now into my own business and having a choice on how I want to show up, it's completely changed to heart-centered.
Yes.
And because of that, I'm attracting people in a whole different way than I've ever done before and impacting people in a whole different way. So it's really quite interesting to have that change happen in your life where you're actually like, wow, this is what else is out there. This is what I could do. This is what I can create. This is what I get to create for my future and for others.
And yet it's challenging. I spent time in corporate as well before going into entrepreneurship. I don't work well in corporate because I think I was born to be an entrepreneur, so I don't fit well in structures. I outperformed every structure that I ever worked in a really short period of time. But the high achiever in me stayed, even when I went into my own business. And so, of course, coaching was the perfect field for me, right? It's all about the goals. It's all about the mindset. It's about being laser focused, about the plan, the strategy, taking the action. And it took me 20 years of doing that to get to a space of, oh, wow, okay, but this is all me being completely masculine. And like I said, I could dress like a girl. I didn't even dress like a girl majority of the time. Let's be honest. I was such a tomboy. I always have been. Didn't even dress like a girl 90% of the time. But there was a lack of femininity in everything that I do, which is why I'm creating the art of feminine self-leadership. Because it's really different. And I found it personally very challenging to choose to show up from heart and not from mind, because I found that either women were completely pendulum swung over to the other side and they were way too girly for me, or they were out of corporate but still corporates.
Yeah.
And it was that, well, how do I now show up? And how do I give myself permission to show up as the crazy, wild, inappropriate majority of the times, outspoken, sometimes powerful, sometimes not, sometimes crazy, sometimes centered person, without having to pick one and then saying, well, now I have to show up like this all of the time, which goes straight back to mine, right? So how did you find that transition from corporate to entrepreneurship and really giving yourself permission to be Sally, and how you chose to show up as Sally?
Yeah, so I consciously made the decision to leave corporate. So I made the choice. I wasn't feeling comfortable where I was at that point in time. And I think deep down, I felt like I had done what I wanted to do at that stage. And I knew there was something more waiting for me. So I trusted my intuition. That was one of the first things that I tapped back into, was just trusting that I was making the right decision. And as soon as I switched my mindset from, what are they going to do with me? Because they were making corporate changes at the time, to, no, I get to choose what I want to do. And I asked to be let go. I asked to be, finish my career with this company. And I tell you that the conversation was so beautiful, and it was so calm, and it was so nice, and it was so right. And so having that ability to make the decision first, and knowing that it was the right decision going into the conversation, just made it so smooth for me. And I was rewarded accordingly. Right? I was rewarded. I had a great package, and I was surprised at what I got. So it was, I think that because I changed my energy, because I changed how I was showing up, and because I was firm with my decision and I was at peace with it, that made a huge difference for me. Because I had other colleagues at the same time, as the company was going through transition, that didn't have the choice. Someone else chose for them, or that they were struggling with the new contract and didn't want to accept it. And they were struggling, and it was like a fight the whole time. But I just made my own mind up that I was ready. And so it was the most beautiful thing I probably did for myself throughout my career, because I made that choice and it worked out in my favor. And then from there, I knew I really wanted to go and impact people in a different way than I'd been able to in corporate. So I started searching. I just took my time and I started searching for what is it that I'm looking for. And what I really discovered was over time, I went to different coaches. I took different programs. I was searching for what was going to be right. And there were some that, had points in them that were good, and others that I wouldn't even go near that. That's not my style. I wouldn't get people to do that kind of thing. And when I found, sort of the right mentors, it all made sense immediately. And what I discovered was, from all of the work that I had done in leadership in corporate, everything that was taught in corporate was how to do your job, not why you're getting the results you're getting and how to get those results to be different. Because there was always people like you, Elle, that would probably always be those top performers, and everybody's like, what is she doing? Honestly, what is she doing that you could do? But we don't teach that, right? We teach them the how, the how, the how. And so when I discovered that there's a different way of being able to work with people to help them to get the results and create that life that they wanted of their own, that's when all the doors started opening for me. And the people started showing up and the opportunities showed up, and it just became a whole different way of working with people than I'd ever worked with in my life. So for me, it was just, every time I would meet with a client, it was just like the most beautiful situation. And it was just with ease, I was able to work through whatever they were going through at that particular point in time in the programs. And it just felt good. And it felt empowering to me, and it felt joyful for me. And I could see the actual physical and material changes that they were creating in their lives. And that's when I really started to understand that I had so much more inside of me that I had held back because of the expectation or my thought on what I needed to be in a corporate environment. So for me, the journey was just one of discovery, but it's been so beautiful to be on the other side and understand where I'm really meant to be and what my skill set is to be able to offer to people to help them, in their journey to become who they really should be, and their purpose and their goals, and to really have the opportunity to dream again. And I think that's what I love the most, is my clients have the opportunity to dream again after being stuck for so many years.
And it's that decision, it's that making the decisions. And like you said, making a firm decision and being at peace with your decision. And for me, when I started tapping into our ultimate power as human beings, is the power of choice, my life changed. And a lot of people still say they don't have a choice. And here's my response to that. You have a choice to not choose. That's still a choice. Just because you don't like the choice, the options of choices that you have in front of you, doesn't mean that you don't have a choice. All our power lies in choice. All our power lies in choice.
Yes.
And what I'm finding, and this is quite interesting for me, because what I discovered was decision is in fact a feminine trait, not a masculine trait as what we think it is. Because the feminine in the creative energy is the one that holds the vision and decides this is what will be. And as women, I feel one of our greatest growth areas is being firm in our decisions and holding that container, holding that boundary in our decision, and not constantly checking in with our partners. Are you okay with me making this decision? Our girlfriends, what do you think about this decision? Our families, our tribes, as everybody is always talking about, right? Is that as women, it's taking ownership of our decisions and being firm in them, and then being at peace with whatever it is that we decide. That is a game changer. So I want to acknowledge you for doing that. And as you said, intuitively, it sounds to me as though when you came to that crossroads and you chose to follow your intuition and you chose to take ownership of your decisions, was when you became a self-leader and you already had moved out of corporate leadership. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Because it took me a while. It probably took me 6 months to come out of the, oh my gosh, what's next for me? Oh my gosh, what am I going to do? Oh my gosh, this company's not offering me the kind of positions. I was in the company for 13 years. They weren't offering me the kind of positions that I felt I was qualified for. They were almost taking me back to a starting level. I'm like, I'm not that person. I don't need to accept that. And so when I did make that decision, it was with clear thought, it was clear heart, it was clear emotion, and it was almost like with a smile on my face that I called to talk to the VP and say, hey, this is what I'm going to do. Yeah. And they're like, oh, okay.
And thank you for bringing in the 6 months, because I think often people think everything has to happen instantly, and everything does happen instantly. And they are denying themselves the periods of gestation, the periods of uncertainty. I have just come out of a year-long period of, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what's next for me. And being comfortable in the discomfort, especially as a high achiever, of not pushing that I have to know today, I have to take action today. They say I must take action before I'm ready. And sitting and going, no, I'm going to be in the unknown until I know, and then take the action. So thank you for bringing in. It took 6 months of not knowing.
Yeah, it was a lot of up and down too. It was like a lot of fear. There was a lot of, okay, well, I'll find out about this one and I'll jump to that one. And I tried to justify why these positions would work. And it was like even they were trying to get me at one point to move to another part of the country on my expense to go work for the same company. I'm like, what? So all of these things started coming up, and they were all red flags, but it was like I was still trying at that point in time to fill the, put that puzzle together and say, yeah, it can work. This can work. That can work. And then when I finally just looked at my value, myself, and said, no, they're just not valuing me, and I'm worth more than that. And I can take care of myself with what I want to do for my future, because I see a brighter future. That's when I was able to switch the switch. And it was like, as soon as I made that decision, it was so much peace, like I said earlier, but it was the moment I made that decision, it was right. And I knew it was right. And I think that's where, like you said, a lot of people don't give themselves the opportunity to have that feeling. They're going with fear as opposed to, you know what, it'll all work out. It's going to be good. I will create what I choose to create. And, it's not all going to be, cupcakes and balloons and, and happy times, but I've made a decision, and I know in my gut, it's the right decision. And it was the most amazing time for me. And when I saw others struggling, and I took control of my life. And what you were talking about earlier, we need to take back that control of how we're feeling in this situation and how we're being made to feel, and then to be able to make our decisions so that we're at peace with it.
And trust the guidance of emotions. Trust that the emotions want your attention for something specific. There's introspection that needs to be done. And the other thing that I want to highlight that you have just pointed out so beautifully is, when we know, it really makes sense. When we just know, and people go, but how? I don't know. There's certain things that we just know, and it's the things where we are normally connected with our higher selves that is almost unexplainable, but it's just an absolute certainty. And I'm finding that most people don't trust that because they can't explain to other people how they got to the knowing. So instead of then still holding to the knowing and continuing on their route, they will cause change so that it is explainable, and so that other people who are looking at their lives can make sense of it. I feel like we're supposed to make sense of our lives. I think it's robbing people of magic and the magic of life. Whereas the more I can be delighted by life, the more satisfaction I'm getting in my life experience.
Well, and I think we put a lot of weight on other people's opinions and other people's judgment of us. And so, I'm sure a lot of people, when I made that move, were like, what are you going to do next? Where are you going to go? Why would you give up such a good job, et cetera, et cetera? And we do listen to that.
Yeah.
And we listen to other people's fear, and we take that on, and we take on their, their paradigms as ours now. So, somebody else might have a paradigm. Well, you've got a good corporate job and you got a good pension, and why would you ever leave that? You're not far from retirement. Why wouldn't you just put in the last 5 to 10 years? And it's like, there's better out there. Right. And so that you would get all of that noise from, I'll call it noise from other people in your life, but holding strong to your decision, because you're the only one that knows what's right for you.
Yeah,
There's
absolutely.
going to always be noise, and you have to be comfortable with what's happening for you is because you're making that decision and you're choosing, and you're not having to listen to the noise anymore. And that's a lot of freedom that shows with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's round back to the question that starts every podcast. And we're already halfway through and we haven't done the question because, like I said, this conversation can go into so many different areas. When I first met you, I was so impressed by your grace and your presence and your confidence. And it wasn't a false confidence. It wasn't a bravado sense that I get so often from people. And I'm not criticizing it. It's just an observation, right? And I already knew that you were an unapologetic woman in your essence. So what does it mean to you to be an unapologetic woman?
I believe that means to me that I'm confident in my own decisions. I'm confident in who I choose to show up as. I'm confident in how I get to serve. I'm confident in being able to give back where I choose to give back. And I'm confident in not having to listen to other people's opinions anymore. And that was a big change for me, especially in the last year. We have different people in our lives that have different roles within our lives and different pecking orders sometimes. And, there's lots of different things like that. And I'm really finding that being an unapologetic woman is standing up for myself in all of those areas, and not standing up in a way that's anger or fear or pushing back, but just sending love to the person and choosing to make my own decisions that I choose to make, regardless of how I'm being made to feel. Mm-hmm. Because there's a lot of different relationships we have. Can be family, can be friends, can be people that you've worked with. There's many that we have, but I think some people like to push their agendas or their feelings or their coercion on other people. And I'm finding that now I'm not accepting that, and I'm not allowing that to take me away from what I truly feel I should be. And so I'm unapologetic to those circumstances now, because this is my life and I get to choose it. And I don't need to follow someone else's direction if it doesn't make me feel the way I want to feel. I'm about being at peace and having joy and really enjoying every moment of my day. And so if there's a relationship that isn't feeling the way that I like it, I'm just going to leave that relationship alone, and I'm not going to respond the way that I did before, and allow that person to take control over me in some way, shape, or form. So that's a big change for me in the last few years. And I know it's because I'm at a space in my life where I have that ability to trust the intuition that's coming to me, trust the thoughts that are coming to me, trust the feeling I have that's attached to the thoughts and the reaction to the situation. And so for me, that was a big learning on not to be able to take on other people's energy and behavior if it didn't make me feel beautiful and didn't make me feel loved and didn't make me feel joy. So that to me was a big moment for me this last year or so, when I actually have stepped up into that and become unapologetic for that.
What I'm hearing is really confidence in self, and self with a capital S, self as in confidence in who I am as my highest version of self. And when we attach to that, when we connect to that, when we connect to there is Elle the human and there is Elle the spirit. And so the human is never separated from the spirit, and the spirit will guide me always with complete compassion and acceptance and appreciation and love for me. Like my spirit has my back. Then how can I not be confident in who I am and how I am being guided? And when we become then unattached to other people wanting to control, because we can see that it's from fear. When we become unattached to other people's opinions, they can still give us their opinion, right? And we can respect it as their opinion, but we don't have to make it our opinion anymore. We don't have to reform ourselves to fit the mold of what another person is experiencing us as. That is so powerful. And what I want most women to understand is that it's the most loving thing to do to leave those relationships, because as those relationships are causing you pain, it's actually also causing the other person pain. Whether they are aware of it or not is irrelevant. There's suffering in those bad relationships. And I always say that I left my marriage when I finally loved myself, and therefore for the first time truly loved him enough to leave, because I knew that the relationship for both of us was destructive, toxic, and creating an atmosphere of suffering. And yet so many people still think, oh my God, no, you have to stay, you have to work through it. And I'm not criticizing that either. It took me 19 years to leave. Like even saying that out loud is like, it took me 19 years to leave, because I knew right from the start that it wasn't right. It was such a beautiful teacher for me, right? But when we become that unapologetic woman, we don't need other people to apologize for their opinions either, because it gets to be their experience and their opinions. And so I'm finding that there's a lot of just being, once you become unapologetic. Like, you get to have your experience and I get to have my experience. And if you want to create an experience of suffering in your life, I honor that. I'm not going to change that. I'm not going to try and influence you in that. You get to create that for yourself. It's a lot of power in that, isn't there? It's a lot of power
absolutely
in becoming an unapologetic woman.
Well, and I think we definitely need to have more unapologetic women, because we tend to, I don't know, as women as a whole, we want to fix everything. We want to make sure everybody's happy. We want to make sure, people are getting what they want from the relationships they have with us, but then we sacrifice ourselves, right? We sacrifice ourselves so much. And I was meeting with a gal today, and she was saying, oh, well, I'm wearing this hat and this hat and this hat and this hat and this hat, and I'm exhausted, and I don't know what I'm going to do, and I don't have any free time, and I don't have time to do the things I love to do that I used to do 20 years ago. And it's like, wow, what is it that's caused that you feel that you have to do all of that while others around you are expecting that from you, because we, in a way, trained them to expect that from us, but we don't feel like we have a voice to stand up and say, you know what, I just can't do this anymore, and I'm going to take this off my plate and that off my plate, and I need some support, or I need some help. And I think we need to stand up more as women and men. I think there's men out there that do the same thing as well, but we need to really own the fact that we get to change how we're showing up in that regard, and not having to be everything for everybody.
It's almost taking it further for me. It's about not having to be anything for anybody. Because at the end of the day, and this really hit me a few months ago, I was going through a period of transition in my life as I had met my new partner. And I was like, oh my God, I'm not doing everything that I used to do for my boys. How will they love me if I'm not doing for them the things that I used to do for them? And I feel, and I've had this conversation with other women before as well, and most agree to disagree with me. I think this whole service conversation, that we are in service to others, that we have to, that our life purpose is about other people, not about our own life experience, needs to change. Because what if we are worthy of love if we are nothing to nobody? And we can we still be worthy of love? Or have we made love and relationships so transactional that we honestly don't feel like people can love me for who I am if I'm not doing anything for them? And that is my growth area at the moment. What if I'm nothing to nobody? Not that I'm not nothing to nobody, but I need, I'm working through that process. What if I'm nothing to nobody? How can they still love me just for being me?
Yeah.
And that's a tough one.
Because a lot of it is conditional, right? A lot of it is conditional. And we tend to get into patterns ourselves. And now we want to release those patterns. And the people around us are like, what's going on? Who is this person? Why are you changing? What do you mean I need to do this, or you need to support me with this? So I think we need to start changing the conditions of which we've held ourselves accountable to in the past, and start to free up ourselves to be able to step into that space that you're talking about, which is, I'm accountable to me, my spirit's me, it's going to guide me where I need to be, it's going to guide me to what I need to do. But we need to all, co-create together and bring that love together, because the love is really what bonds anybody in the world. You go anywhere in the world and you can have a bond of love with whoever you're with at that point in time. And it can be the most beautiful thing you've had. And it may be just because you smiled at them and they smiled back, and it's the only smile they've had from somebody in weeks. So thinking about how we can now impact others just by a simple thing like a smile can make a world of difference to somebody's life, and we don't even know it.
And it's interesting to me, and this almost brings us back to the beginning of the conversation. I went to Australia with my partner and his kids last week for a holiday. And on the way back, you have to go through so many securities. Oh my gosh. And I was going through the passport thing, and now they're scanning you, and the woman is standing there and everybody just gets scanned, and then they walk past her, or they get scanned and it has a problem, and then she has to look at them. And I paused with her and I said, oh my goodness, so you stand here the whole day, but the computer is doing what you used to do. Why is that? And she said, oh, because that is faster, because there's no interaction time with people. So the technology is faster. And I said to her, wow, that must be so lonely to stand here the whole day. And she broke out in the smile, and she goes, yes, I'll chat to you, And my partner was laughing at me, and we were having the conversation, and he said to me, I was watching you on the trip, and you are the only person I've ever met who greets everybody but makes eye contact in greeting them, who acknowledges every single person at every single point. You don't just hand in your ticket, you hand it in, you say, oh, thank you so much. This is fantastic. I hope you're having a great day. Thank you for everything that you're doing. Guys, and there's this look of shock on people's faces, and then they smile. And I said to him, but that's the whole thing, because people deserve acknowledgement that everybody is co-creating a life experience. Every single touch point of human communication is somebody who is a player in my life experience. I can't have the life experience without them, regardless of how big or small their role is. You get into a lift with me, baby, you've just co-created an experience with me, whether you want to or not. And I think a lot of the times people don't want to, because I'd start talking to everybody. But it's about acknowledging and recognizing again that every single person on this planet is co-creating with us. And when we start taking back responsibility and ownership of self and then start co-creating, oh my goodness, that is so juicy. And I wish more people would just wake up, snap out of the techno trance that they have fallen into and go, what is the experience I want to co-create with everybody today? Because that's my life experience. And I get to decide how I show up and how I receive them. Such a game changer.
Absolutely. It's a huge game changer. And I have a similar airport story where I was flying back from another place in Canada about a month or so ago. And I got to the airport. It was very early in the morning, and there was this massive lineup for security. Massive. So much so that they ended up calling management in to try and figure out how they could relieve it. But there was a lot of very upset people and people that were, causing a scene and that kind of thing. And I just stood there and, smiled and just taking it easy, watching everything and watching the people that were working and what they were trying to do to resolve, and people trying to push up to the front to say, no, I got to get in first, that kind of thing. So I watched all of that. And there was one lady that had security outside of the lineups before you get to check into everything. And I could see that she was getting a little frustrated, but she was also, the gatekeeper in some way. And as I got closer up in the line about an hour later, I looked over at her, and they had announced that if you were on these two different flights that you should come up front. And I just looked over and said, oh, I wish. And she smiled back. And then about 5 minutes later, she flagged me over and she checked all my stuff. She found something supposedly. And then she took me through all of the lineups of hundreds of people right up to the gate. She pushed me right up to the person that was doing the scanning. And then everybody was like, why does she get to go forward? She's got something I have to check. And she put me in there and she got me through. And it was just and I was talking to my husband afterwards, and I said, wow, you won't believe what happened. And he says, well, I would have been so upset. And I said, no, I couldn't do anything. I was just relaxed. I just took it calm. I had a very calm, I knew I'd get on eventually. And what's the worst that can happen? I'd miss my flight. So I just calmed down and I just stayed in that energy the whole time and attracted this to me to move me forward and get me into my flight an hour before anybody else. Yeah. And so the energy that we carry in a situation and the eye contact can make so much of a difference to just connecting with somebody, even with a smile or a few words. And it's just so powerful when you just live in that zone, as opposed to thinking about the stresses, because every single person there, if they had relaxed and just gotten into the right energy, could have all gotten through those long lineups so much faster.
Well, and it was interesting because I'm one of the most impatient people you'll ever meet. Patience is not a virtue, right? But then I have to play these games with myself. So we ordered coffee, and oh my God, these poor baristas just were not coping. And so we stood there waiting and waiting and waiting. And then eventually I was like, well, I could stand here and get really irritated because I could feel the irritation build up inside of me, or I could start chatting to whoever. And so whoever was standing on my right-hand side got to chat to me. And then true as God, every time they were the next person that get called up, and I would go, oh, but I just made a friend. And then they go. And they all left with a smile. And then I would pick the next person. And I just had conversation after conversation after conversation. And the baristas were watching me. And eventually I got my drink and they go, thank you so much for that. And I go, you girls must be exhausted. And they were like, yeah, my God, we're not touching sides here. But it could have been so much worse. And it is about, for me, how do I find something to occupy myself with? So if my life has created this pocket of time that I'm not getting what I want, then what else is that pocket of time created for, that I can still have a really pleasurable experience from?
Yeah.
And like I said, it changes the energy. But here's the other thing that I want to then say to people, but don't fake it. Because if you're just going to make eye contact and put a smile on because you want an outcome, like, you can't fake
it doesn't
that.
work.
It doesn't work.
No.
Let's talk about the fake it till you make it, which we
Okay.
grew up with.
Yes,
Just fake it
absolutely.
till you make it. I used to say that shit as well, right?
So did I.
Preached and teached, baby. Preached and teached. And I feel like humanity is ready for an upgrade in this one. What I
Mhm.
have discovered, it's not a fake it till you make it. It's a choose to be the woman who is
Mhm.
already living that life until my energetic frequency is that woman, and therefore my
Mhm.
life starts showing that back to me. How do
Mhm.
you experience the fake it till you make it philosophy? And how did you translate it for yourself? How did you change it?
Mhm. Yeah, so we all experienced it, like you said, when we were in our previous lives, within our careers and that kind of thing, because we were taught that right from the beginning: fake it till you make it, fake it till you make it. And some people were like, what? How can I fake it? And yet we question them. No, you just have to. You just have to. And part of what I teach people is about their self-image. And so when you are looking to show up differently, how would that person show up? What would they be looking like? How would they be carrying themselves? What would they be saying? How would they be acting? Because if you have a big vision or an idea, or your creative juices are kicking in, it's because you're ready. It's because you're ready to take a different step. And so if you have that creative idea, maybe it's that you want to be an entrepreneur and you've got this beautiful product that you want to create, or you've got an idea that you think would light up the world. How would that person with the goal achieved be showing up?
Yeah.
And what's the energy you're going to be in? How are you going to be talking to people? Who is going to be your network? Think it's almost like a fake it till you make it, but it's not really, because you're going to get into it as if the goal is achieved, but with the energy attached to it. Because if you don't have that energy attached to it, it's going to be a push. And I think what you want to do is to really embrace how you want to be. Like, you get to create your life. You get to create who you are. You get to create the people that you get to contact. Like you're talking about, I get to talk to people all the time. I do the same thing, and my husband is always like, okay, is she going to stop? But it's like, that's just what I do, because I love to learn about people. I love to hear their stories, and people love to be acknowledged and tell their stories. And I love to hear it, because everybody's got a story. And so I think when you take that fake it till you make it, as opposed to just trying to, put that round peg in a square hole, or vice versa, you want to be able to say, oh, how do I get to actually be present in the moment, but yet present in the moment as if my goal's achieved, present in the moment as if, I'm living in my dream home, present in the moment as if, my family is going on this amazing vacation to Disney, and because that's been our lifelong dream. Like, how does that feel today, as if it's already happened? That to me is the difference between the fake it and the till I make it when I was younger, as opposed to today, where it's like, I want to show up with this energy of attraction, and this energy of just someone that people could easily talk to and feel comfortable with, and just get an attachment right away, because of the energy I'm bringing forward in the conversation. And because of, like you said earlier, being present in the moment is so important. And that to me is something that we don't really do well anymore, because we're distracted by everything else around us, our phones, our computers, our, all the technology. Even walking through an airport, how many screens have they got up? How many different things have they got going on? Any of those things, it's all a distraction, and we don't live in the present moment anymore. So I think that is one of the key elements of being present with whoever you are at that moment in time, is probably the most powerful thing you can do.
And that's something that I want to maybe touch on before we start wrapping this up. It's about loving myself as I am at the moment, instead of self-criticizing, self-shaming, self-blaming, and all the things that we are taught to do, right? So I am where I am right now, and then choosing my evolved self until I embody her, but without shaming where I am. I feel like a lot of the times, especially as women, we are so hard on ourselves. Like I'm going through a body transformation again at the moment, because I've gone into menopause, and my body
Mm-hmm.
don't know.
It changes.
My body has changed, and I haven't caught up with a lifestyle change to match my body to fully support her in her new vibration, right? So my body is not where I exactly thrive, where I feel the most confident in her. But then I had to realize as well, my body is always evolving. My body is always changing, and she just is where she is right now on the way to her next form. But I get to start choosing, constructing energetically my next form, and then choosing that behavior until I embody that next form again, but without shaming my current form. And I feel like, especially in the female entrepreneurial space, there's a lot of shaming of self because, oh, I should be further ahead. I should be where she is. You don't know where she is really, and you don't know what it really took for her to get there. And in that comparisitis that we are going through at the moment, we are removed from the appreciation of everything that's in the moment. And quite frankly, all our power is in the moment. Our power is not in comparing, and our power is not in the future. Our power all lies here. And if you are rejecting self right here, you're actually rejecting all of your power right here. And I really hope that women hear this. Like, you're in the perfect spot where you are right now, regardless of how beautiful or how shitty that spot is, because it's on the way to your next transformation. No, let me reframe that. It's part of your transformation, the ever ongoing transformation and evolution of who we are. But that piece of I love myself now completely, that's the missing piece for most people, because they think I'll love myself when I look like that, when I make that much money, when I have that many clients, when I have that position, then I'll love myself. No, chica, you won't.
No.
Trust me, being there, done that, got that G-string. Doesn't work that way.
No, absolutely.
We could go on for 2 hours. So, and I'm always very conscious of the listeners. What do you take an unapologetic stance for in the world?
That's a good question. An unapologetic stand for in the world. I think the biggest thing I would love to see for our world is an abundance of joy and love. And I think person by person, one by one, we can add some joy. We can share our love with people globally. And oftentimes we don't even know who it is that's on the receiving end, but we can absolutely share that joy and that love. And I think there's been a big change from when I was a child to today, as far as the family connection. And I see, especially in, North America where I live, that family connection is, intergenerational connection is not as strong as it's been in other countries around the world, or where it used to be. And I think we need to get back to that intergenerational community, that love, that joy, that sense of belonging, that comes with having that circle around you that's shared unconditionally.
And I feel that this is a conversation for another day, but this is where we need to evolve back into interdependence, even within the family, because what I'm finding is that there's too much independence within the family structure, and there's no cohesiveness. So the structure breaks apart because you can't just have independence. There's no interdependence in we work together as a unit in creating a family vision. That is really what is required. And it's especially part of women's evolution right now, because we went from being extraordinarily codependent to fiercely independent. But it's time for us to evolve back into interdependence. So I'm going to leave the conversation there for today. Sally, how do the ladies get hold of you? Anybody who's listening to this will go, oh my God, want some of Sally. How do they connect with you?
They can find me on LinkedIn. My name is Sally Arkell-Boles, just like you can see on the screen here. They can find me on Instagram, Facebook, And my website is also by my name. So they can find me in many different ways. And I'd be happy to set up a call with anybody that's interested. But definitely been a valuable conversation today. And I really appreciate the time.
Oh, this was amazing. Thank you,
Thank you,
very, very much. Ladies, I hope that this has touched your heart the way that it has mine. I have to say that Sally is really a woman that I could spend days on a call with, because I feel like every time that we get off a call, my mind has expanded. My mind has been allowed to reshape itself a little bit. And that's one of the things that I love about our conversations. It really comes together so beautifully every single time from a space of love. And the love that I feel from you is always unquestioned
Nice.
by every cell in my body. And so I thank you for the gift of you, and especially the gift of you in my life. It is
Thank you.
so appreciated. Connect with Sally is all I'm going to say. And thank you so much for listening. We'd love to hear from you, ladies. Now, what is it that you are taking away from this conversation? We covered a lot today, all over the show, as usual, as women do. But what are your key takeaways from today's conversation? And where do you want to take the conversation next? Because we absolutely can take it further in the comments on whatever platform you are listening to this. So that if you've got any questions or if anything has come up for you, pop it in the comments and let's take the conversation further. Until next week, I hope that you have an amazing day further. And always remember, we get to live our legacies, unleashed, unlimited, and unapologetic. Take care. Cheers. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please share it with others, post about it on social media, or leave a rating and review. To catch all the latest from me, you can follow me on Instagram at The Unapologetic Woman and on LinkedIn at Elle Nagy. And if you're interested in experiencing the Unapologetic Woman Friendwork Soiree, book in for our next open meeting at unapologetic-women.as.me/unapologetic. Thanks again, and I'll see you next week.